an hour to go through a lot of material, and so we're going to get started. Hello and welcome to Web Components in Drupal, or as we advertised it, the case for Web Components in Drupal Frontends. I'm Adam Duran. This is
Christopher Bloom.
There you go. We're going to do really fast intros. My name is Adam Duran. I am a front-end architect at 1X Internet. I'm based in Brussels. The main office is in Frankfurt, Germany. I love design systems, huge fan, and I am what I call a standard bearer for best practices. I'm always looking for the best way to do something. I don't have all the answers, but I'm always searching. And yes, I sing opera. And
I was in the opera part. Go ahead.
And I know Kung Fu, just like Keanu Reeves. Chris.
I'm Chris. My hobbies are not that cool. I'm a developer over at a place called knapsack.cloud that deals with design systems software. I'm also very much a design systems advocate. And that's actually how Adam and I met on Twitter and became fast friends, and then decided, you know what, hey, we should do a presentation together. If you remember the Particle project from a couple of years ago, I helped run that for a while, which leads us to this conversation right now.
So we are assuming that you all have some of these foundations to follow this conversation. We are assuming that you all have some experience with JavaScript ES6 class syntax, modern JavaScript, NPM, HTML5, and the Drupal theme layer, although not so much of that, oddly enough.
All right. Now, real fast. What is it? What's a web component? What is a custom element? These are web platform APIs, web standards that allow us to create our own custom elements that all modern browsers understand natively. If you take a look at the code example, there should be 2 lines that are highlighted. You should see a DS-card, design system card, okay, with a custom attribute on it for mode. You can see a DS-image, a DS-title, slots, default content. What we're trying to show here is that every one of these elements does not currently exist as a part of the HTML5 spec, but you get to make them, and you can make any of your own custom elements that you want.
And why do we want to do that? Well, because these components are reusable, not just in a website, but also in applications and even other frameworks. You can use web components in Vue, React, Svelte, or HTML.
All right. Now, this feels kind of like the holy grail, if you will. Adam, you have words on this.
Yeah, I do. I feel like it is the holy grail because you can really create a web component. You can create a component and place it anywhere. This has been apparently a web standard for 10 years, but it hasn't really gotten a lot of support until recently. There's still some gotchas with the IE11, which we'll discuss later. But since IE11 is going bye-bye in a few months, we're really excited.
All right. So let's dive into a web component, see how we can make one. We saw that pretty card picture earlier, that nice little design component. What kind of code does it take to get there? All we need to do is we need to extend a class that exists in all modern browser runtimes. It's the HTML element class. We then simply need to override a method called connected callback, and all we have to do is return a string that looks like HTML. That's it. That's all. As long as this JavaScript makes it to a browser, you have a custom element. You can make it do anything you want. Now, one of the last things we have to do is we have to register it. Custom elements .define. This is the class. This is the element name that you will see in the markup, and you attach it to your custom JavaScript. Finally, this is how we actually use it. As long as this appears in some kind of DOM and some kind of HTML, your component comes on right over, and we can say, hello world. All right. Now, that's all well and good, but that's just the basics. Probably the coolest named technology in all of the internet is the Shadow DOM. And in the Shadow DOM, what we're able to do is we're actually able to encapsulate not only our markup, but our styles and our logic. And this allows us to take a web component and give it to some other site or framework or user and it brings over everything it needs to look perfect. What's important here is that we are scoped. We have these scoped styles. So anything that we do to make this look a certain way and to style it a certain way, it will not be overridden or stepped on by the global styles that already exist.
Unless we want it to. Next slide, please.
All right.
So we're going to take a look at the static function get styles. And you can see that we're just returning some CSS. And oh, what is this? This is a host selector. And if you're wondering to yourself, what is host? Host selects the custom element itself. So you don't actually need any more markup inside of your web component at all, actually. You can see on line 17, return HTML, I'm styled. So really quickly, there's some styles in here. They are scoped. And we're using, for this demonstration, on line 7, primary color CSS variable with a fallback to Chris's favorite, Rebecca Purple. So this is kind of the new CSS and JS. But you're wondering if we've just said these are encapsulated styles, but we have this primary color CSS variable, how does that all work? Next slide.
Now, before we jump to the next slide, real quick, we are cheating on this example because we're reaching for a framework, which we're going to get into a little bit later. If the code looks a little bit different, frameworks are going to make the amount of boilerplate we write a whole lot less.
There you go. So we have this example of our My Hello Again, where, again, just for simplicity, we're showing only the background, var primary color, the fallback of Rebecca Purple, and it will be, in absence of primary color, it'll be purple. But if in the global styles, we set the CSS variable, I'm going too fast, of red, primary color to red, it will in fact be red. Or,
so read it like
even more specific.
If this doesn't exist, this becomes purple. But if we do allow it to exist, it takes on the value.
Now, if we assigned that primary color at the level of that CSS var example, which you see up in line 2 of the first markup block, if we set it to blue, that supersedes what we did at the root, and the component will be blue.
All right. Now, if there's any questions for that you want to ask us at the end, let us know. Hop into the Q&A tab. This is kind of, we're getting into the code. If you have anything.
There's a lot more. I'll say this really quick. There's a lot more to styling web components than just host, but that is outside the scope of this session. Chris.
All right. Now, how do we get this into Drupal? That's what everybody, I'm going to assume, at DrupalCon is here for. Cool. How do I get this in Drupal? I hate to be kind of a downer or a letdown. It's no big deal. There's no magic. It's you just use the element in your Twig. It's that simple. We've been doing this for half a decade with Twig partials or the components module in Drupal already. And instead of importing another Twig file by like a namespace, you just simply mention your component element and pass values into it. The way we pass values into it is the way we've passed values into Twig since Drupal 8 was released. We've got a custom attribute here called name, and we're going to reach into this block. I'm pretending we made a block called the Hello World entity in Drupal. It's got a field on it, apparently, called headline. We're going to reach in, we're going to grab the value, and we're going to pass it right across the HTML attribute into the custom element. That's it. No magic.
All right. So what you may or may not know, this is like when you buy a new car and all of a sudden you go out on the highway and everyone has the same car. Well, you're going to start looking under the hood of your favorite websites and you're going to realize that custom elements are really actually being used in a lot of different places. This is the EA.com website, and you can see they have this EA Gamebox component. It's got slots and it's got all of these attributes, background image and alt text and a logo URL, and it's really small and I'm having trouble reading the other fields, but you can see it has a shadow root, it's got some styles, it has both standard HTML5 markup inside, and oh, what's that? They have a lazy image component, so you can put components inside of components, and it's really it's really beautiful. Writing these components as markup it's just beautiful.
I recommend everybody go hit EA.com right now. Open up the DOM and start inspecting. You're going to see a whole world open up of possibilities, let alone video games, which I love. These folks over here, Phase 2 Technology, recently relaunched their website fully in web components as well. Inspect anything. Find this little dot here. This heading right here, I've got highlighted. You'll see the namespace of P2-heading, P2-dot, where you're going to see a bunch of design systems rules encapsulated in these components. You'll be able to, if you've ever messed with React, all of this should look extremely similar. It's little components that have props in the React world. We call them attributes in the web components world that we can send different values to, and the browser responds immediately.
Next slide. There we go. This is Lazea.ch. Lazea is a product of Schwab Pharmaceuticals, and we recently launched this site with all web components on the front end. And you could see here that there's a header with its slots for all of the branding and the menu and the search, and with the drop down inside, and the drop down is a slot for button, and it's just writing these custom elements and together as their own patterns, and they really, like, anything can go inside of anything else. It really makes that whole separation of concerns just the easiest thing in the world.
Adam, what does the SW namespace stand for here?
It's just for Schwabe, which is spelled SCHWABE, but we only wanted to keep it to 2 letters, and so we went with SW.
Nice, very nice. And one more, just to throw out here, we don't need to get too far into it, but AES.com is an energy organization. We're using this one specifically because it uses the Stencil web components framework, which brings over a whole lot of extra goodies you do not have to write by hand. I recommend go to AES.com, open up the network inspector, and watch the web components stream in dynamically to the page based on if they're used or not. So this is this is an example of you don't have to load everything. You can get dynamic loading of just the web components you need, which is very efficient.
You could actually do that. You could build a web component that uses Intersection Observer to do that itself. It's just that in Stencil, it comes out of the box.
Yep, does it for you. All right. Adam, this is
mine. So we recommend, believe it or not, that you publish your design system, your web components, as an NPM package. And this is so you can import it. It can be consumed by your Drupal front end, or it could be consumed by any other application related to your project, or another through a framework. You could have a React widget inside, which we do actually in the Schwab site, in a paragraph, and you just drop in web components, and the button inside the React looks the same as the button inside of Drupal.
Inside of Drupal. Now, something important to point out here, publishing a package does not mean automatically making it public. I know sometimes we work with folks who don't want all their stuff out on the internet. GitHub, GitLab, even NPM all have private options for no extra cost. And especially GitHub with their automatic private package repositories, it's a wonderful way to have a standalone repository for the design system, for your components. You publish packages, and then you have versions. When you have versions, there's a lot of power. All right, let's talk about the second recommendation. You heard I mentioned versions. This is how we get this into Drupal. How do we consume these? Let's pretend this is a package JSON sitting at the root of our Drupal project. All we do is we just point it to where our package lives. And actually, if you go to GitHub /Epic / DrupalCon WC, I made a button to demonstrate this. But this is how we can pull this in. Now, to feed all that JavaScript into Drupal, we can do something as simple as reaching into our library's YAML file at our theme, right? And then pointing to our JavaScript file. I'm doing a simple little copy here. So we don't need a build step. This is one of the amazing things about modern web components frameworks. You don't need a build step in Drupal. How many times have you had to wait for a Drupal theme to build because there's so much JavaScript you've got to wait for? It can be as simple as copy and moving to a new directory. So here you go. reference the JavaScript file in the YAML, and some global CSS if you need to. If your Drupal needs it, you can bring over some custom global styles as well. Adam, do you have anything to add to this one?
Nope, you've covered it all.
All right. And finally, so now that we're releasing packages for our design system as we do work, as we merge into the main branch or whatever, don't do it by hand. Let the robots do the work for you. I recommend Auto in particular. Auto is a really, really awesome project, but here's a couple of others that basically let you take your CI and then just automatically make packages. It's normal to build a project and have hundreds of patch versions of your package. That's totally okay. Being able to automate this in CI, in GitHub Actions, in GitLab CI, there's a lot of power here, and just letting the robots release the packages and then letting other things consume them. All right.
Now, why do we want to separate our design system entirely from our Drupal website? Well, have you ever tried to spin up a website or a page in Drupal to show every variation, all 30 or so variations of a button? Can you imagine having to do that? The tooling for design systems, which like Knapsack, where Chris works, or for us mere mortals, Storybook, allows you to do just that. It allows you to show every variation, every size, every color of everything in your design system. Obviously not just the buttons. A huge benefit. Also, it doesn't take so long to reload the page, so you can really be working just like Pattern Lab. You can really be working much more quickly in the design aspects and not have to worry about integration quite yet.
So, Mark, I couldn't help but look in the comments there. We're going to talk about Pattern Lab here in just a second. I'm glad
there are a lot. We're making good time. There's a lot of great questions. I think we're going to get to a bunch of them. So hold on, guys. We will get there, but we want to get through the slides.
All right. So real fast, why approach this? Why web components with a design system and then versions for your design system? Being able to release sort of out of bound from the application can give you some advantages. I've been on projects in the past where we build one site and then we'd need like multiple sites, right, for say like a client. But as the design system improved over time, we didn't necessarily want that first site to just automatically get all the upgrades willy-nilly. And it actually led to some kind of frozen abilities to kind of improve. This allows you to freeze the way your stuff looks to a point in time and then continue improving it. You can iterate and you can roll back. Let's say that you've got a design system that's at version 112. There's a regression, something goes wrong. Oops, hey, we need a CI. We need to get this off production for whatever reason. It's easy to just hop back to the other version, run CI and build again. And boom, we're now at the prior version. So you get effectively unlimited history for what is ultimately maybe the most code in your code base, which is tons of styles, tons of markup, tons of JavaScript.
There we go. And another why is because of reusability. As I've already said, this is my favorite thing. You can put your web component in Drupal. You can use it in other frameworks. If you go to custom elements everywhere, they actually do these status reports of how custom elements work in sync with Svelte or consumed by Vue or choose your favorite framework. Custom elements can work inside of them.
All right, and of course, custom elements everywhere. I mean, they're already out there. They've just sort of snuck in to a lot of the major websites that we use that are a big part of our lives. All right, so Adam, you got this one, but this does answer the Pattern Lab question earlier.
Yeah. So why not Pattern Lab? I know Chris and I have talked for years at DrupalCons about Pattern Lab, and we love Pattern Lab. But it has its limitations because it's bound to PHP, and therefore and because it is as we use it in Drupal, uses Twig templates. You cannot get JavaScript. Okay, you can using Twig.js, but it's really hard to get JavaScript to just plain old render Twig. It's some hoops you have to jump through. And how many of you have ever had to build a widget in React for your or something, and you have to literally copy and duplicate the styles you had for your perfectly good Twig pattern over into like React land, so that the same, so two buttons would look the same with, you know.
I've gotten up on stage at DrupalCon and said, "Hey, Pattern Lab's awesome. We should be thinking this way." And that was years ago. And Pattern Lab was the Pattern Lab put us on the path to thinking about components, to thinking about design systems, to being able to see design systems prior to application build. There was a time and a place for Pattern Lab, and it's very, very powerful, and huge props to the crew that work on it and build it. But if we want to truly reuse, we can't use a PHP rendering engine for our components. Adam, do you have anything else you wanted to add there?
Nope, go on, please.
Right.
I want to get to the questions.
All right, this is just a quick slide about, yes, this is the W3C spec. It's out there. It was really solidified in 2018. You can go read about it, and there's lots of goodies about what the Shadow DOM and custom styles are expected to do.
And another why is the encapsulation. We touched on this earlier, but you can literally take anyone else's web component and you can drop it, you can borrow it, you can take yours, you can give them to somebody else. You can take this amazing color slider from Spectrum Web Components by Adobe, and if you listen to l.color, that's how you pick the color, and you can use this on your own website.
It's amazing. It's
powerful. I want to try it. It looks great.
All right, some last suggestions for Drupal here, and some final words with Drupal. I often get asked, oh, does this mean we're headless now, right? That's the big fear. Everyone gets real cagey. They're like, yeah, does this mean, oh, JavaScript in the front end, are we now headless? No, in fact, this is kind of the perfect middle ground between JavaScript front ends and Twig backends. You're still rendering an HTML shell and a lot of basic DOM from Drupal. It's what Drupal does very, very well. Drupal is incredibly powerful. It's the best CMS out there. And you just simply move your design system into web components and allow it to do its thing, allow those components to render. So Twig is still very important for reaching in, getting data out, and handing it. There's obviously pre-process functions and all the power of all the hooks. These are some great projects we like: Twig Tweak, Twig Field Value, and the Value project. I have no idea how they landed that namespace. Very, very powerful. Reach for those and make your life easier getting data out of Drupal. All right.
So when do you want to use web components for your design system? Well, number one, will your design system ever be used outside of Drupal? Are you just building basically a big brochure site, or is what you're building really an application? Maybe it has also a Vue storefront, maybe it has a React widget, and you want to leverage using web components to get the consistency of functionality and consistency of appearance for both.
We often end up building a Drupal site with an embedded interactive, right? How many folks have built, like, the map that's got the the little dots on it or whatever? Very frequently, we've had to redo a lot of work to get our designs out of Drupal into that embedded widget. It always felt gross, right? Having to recode a button, having to recode a header or whatnot. This is truly the same language that crosses those barriers. So this really solves that, like, I'm building Drupal, but I also have a massive widget. Now they're just using the same language.
JavaScript skills. Let's talk about that. Jquery is leaving Drupal. A lot of us relied on it for a long time. It was a really useful tool, if a little bit heavy. But now modern JavaScript is everywhere, and writing web components is a really low threshold way to get into modern JavaScript. Unlike Chris, I am not a brilliant JavaScript developer. I actually started in PHP and MySQL back in the day. But I feel like my JavaScript skills have exploded writing web components and configuring storybook stories. It's been a wonderful experience. Writing web components has been the most fun I've had writing code in a long, long time.
Finally, can you, I'm laughing at Impeach Bicycle also. The web captioners are great. Finally, can you ditch old browsers, this old chestnut right here, right? IE 11. Yes, and Stencil, the framework, the web component framework, surprise, that's what we're going to recommend. Stencil makes targeting IE 11 doable. You can do it, and it'll work in IE 11.
Just you can't use those CSS variables, or you can, but it's a pain in the butt. You need fallbacks. You can get there from here. It's just a little more work than most of us want.
That's right. That's right. Now, we're end of life for IE 11 this summer. That, of course, means it'll be around for another couple of years. But you can get there with polyfills, and it's something we don't necessarily have to worry about in the far future. Okay, quick little one here. What about server-side rendering? What about turning this into HTML on the back end, throwing HTML at the front end? Another yes, and you can do this, you just can't do it in PHP. The Stencil framework has a Node plugin that'll actually, a compiler that'll actually turn your stuff into HTML before it goes out the door on a Node server framework. We just cannot do this in PHP right now. Okay, last thing, performance.
There's some questions about this, actually. So about the Flash of Unstyled content and about SEO. So if you could speak to those thoroughly right now, that'll hit a bunch of the questions.
Yeah. All right. So I was giving Mike a shout out because, the Flash of Unstyled content was something, as the JavaScript streams in, there's markup that exists, and then the styles show up. There can be a couple of milliseconds where something doesn't appear right away. There are techniques to get around this. There's a thing that's built into Stencil where there's a class on the page or class per component that is removed once it fully renders. It's so nice.
It's basically like lazy loading. You can just lazy load web components. It's built in Stencil. You can build it yourself in Lit Element. Your call.
That's it. SEO side of this was a huge conversation that we've dealt with before, and ultimately here is a lighthouse report. Open it up in an incognito browser. Turn all your add-ons off. Go hit phase2technology.com right now. Big shout out to that crew again. Really, really great accessibility. Really, really great SEO. And the only reason it's an 89 right there, I think there's a big image on the page or something like that. So modern web crawlers from Google and Bing understand web components.
It also depends on how you build it. If you're dumping content, if you're extracting content in certain ways, like pulling an attribute and putting it into the shadow DOM, that's not as good as slotting something and leaving it in what they call the light DOM. Light DOM is completely accessible and SEO friendly.
Use slots. Use the default slot ever possible for content.
Use slots, use named slots as opposed to a lot of attributes. Definitely. Accessibility is totally possible. If you go to check out the Lion web components from ING Bank, we don't have a link, but one of their design systems lead is a huge accessibility expert. It's possible. You have to just keep your eye on it, just like if you're writing normal HTML.
All right, quick recommendations.
We recommend, obviously, the Lit Element, which is what we use to build that Lizea site. It's if you want to have a little more, it's a little more basic. You have to, it doesn't have the add-ons of Stencil, and Stencil is also is brilliant from Ionic.
Yep, Lit's a great way to just kind of dip your toes into the water. If you want a more complete thing that does a lot more for you automatically, check out Stencil. Incredible project. All right.
So here, when you look at the slides later, here's a bunch of resources and some Slack channels you can join. We're not going to go through this right now because that's it, and we can go to questions.
All right.
So we talked about, I'm just going to scan through these. Can you use Scss for styling web components? Absolutely, you can. It all depends on how you, obviously you have to, I think, compile it before you pass it into your web component. But I know that people have done it, though I personally have not. Could a paragraph be used to pass in values with element included in the paragraph template? Absolutely, we demonstrated that. Chris, what are some of the render blocking implications with components?
All right, so this is why we recommend the slots for content. The web browsers and web components allow you to run JavaScript at a little bit closer to the metal, as it were, right? The browsers understand this. They're going to run it with a little bit more priority. Go ahead.
I just want to say we are at time. We're going to try to get through a few more of these. If you have to go, thank you so much. This has been great, at least for myself and Chris, I believe. I hope you learned something. I hope you tried web components. I know you all have to go to other sessions. I think we can stay for 2 or 3 more minutes and try to plow through a few more questions.
That's right.
Darren's question, is it worth trying to use Twig in JavaScript? I don't think so, personally. Chad, yes.
Flip it around.
Yes, I have sung with Campbell Vertesi. He was the best man at my wedding. He's one of my best friends. Hand in hand with the accessibility question, are there SEO implications? Yes, and we discussed that. Jack, for someone who's relatively new, we gave you that whole resources page. Check them out. Can I comment on the component module that uses components as blocks? It was demoed on Tuesday. I want to check it out myself. It looks really cool, but I actually can't comment on it.
I'd like to know more about that. Is this beyond the @ namespace syntax?
Yeah, it is. No, it allows you, if you put a YAML file, you can expose your web components to Google's block layout and just drop them in. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to go watch that recording. That's
Yep.
something I'm super interested in. And that feels like the right direction for this kind of stuff.
I think it's awesome. How do you handle caching when using web components in Drupal?
All right, so caching. Since we're not sending HTML from the backend, right? This is client-side rendering for all intents and purposes. However, once that bundle hits the browser once, right, we're not re-requesting that bundle. So the JavaScript and the assets are at least cached, but there's still going to be a render cycle on the front end to turn these things into markup and visual.
Which is kind of Wolfgang's question about a negative effect on front-end performance. Yeah, the JavaScript that they've got to load. I think the lazy loading is a great option using intersection observer.
Real quick, just to go back to a site that is fully web components, we're not render blocked on the site. In fact, the analytics on this site were causing greater thrash and block than the web components. Obviously, put a lot of work into keeping your bundle sizes down.
Can you show the resources slide again? Go back to the resources slide for Alexander. There it is. Take a screenshot. Yes, Christoph. I'm going to go, Chris, maybe you too, to the hallway track, and we can hang out there. People can find Chris and I. We'll try to be in separate rooms, and we're going to be in the hallway track and answer further questions.
Hallway track 2. See y'all over there.
All right. We'll go to hallway track 2. All right.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a great night.